This is the 24-hour, $10 dollar store survival challenge. See, I got my camera gear in the backpack. That's all that's in there. Everything else that I've got to use to survive came from the Dollar Tree for 10 bucks. We got to build shelter. We've got to get a fire going in a safe place. We got to be able to cook food if we can find food. Since this is Catch and Cook California and this is our own version of this dollar store survival challenge, I will also challenge myself in saying that if I don't forage and cook or catch and cook something, I'm gonna have to do this all over again. Alright, I got 10 minutes for 10 items on my hand. I gotta get a cutting tool, I gotta get some shelter, I gotta have a way of purifying water, and I gotta do it right now. Let's go. I'm supposed to cook some kind of food, but I've got an idea for this. It's not any of this. I got me some flour and some oil. Big paracord. It's only 25 feet. Oh look, we have one more in green.
2 minutes, 50 seconds.
2 minutes, 50 seconds. Calm down. Don't forget stuff. Yeah. Crappy cutting tool. Another crappy cutting tool. Oh, needle nose pliers. Oh, I want those. Not in the budget. Still. It's a lot of plastic, but that'll do. Where would you be if you were a shower curtain? The shower curtain's not for survival, it's just because I need one. I don't. Not really. How much time we got?
You're at 4 minutes and 18 seconds.
Definitely not this way.
Run. 4:55.
4:55. All right, I'm done.
Compared to the original ones, it's never
Right there. Originally proposed by a YouTuber, Wrangler Star, and he said $10 plus tax. So there it is, $10 plus tax, and I was supposed to have things like water purification, a cutting tool, fire, shelter, etc., and I had to cook a meal. So now let's get creative. Let's go do this. I'm in the woods here. It's a nice little riparian corridor here, riparian forest. There's some good edibles I already see. If you can see over my shoulder there, that's nasturtium, that little circle leaf there. Right over back over here, there's some stinging nettle. And just below my feet is wild three-cornered leek, which is an invasive allium in the onion garlic family. So I'm gonna just start foraging some of this stuff right now. I also need to cut a poke pole because there's a low tide at 3 o'clock today. Oh yeah, and you can see I'm ready for colder weather because it's early December right now, and where I'm building my shelter, there's no way it would be safe to have a fire. So I can't use a fire to stay warm, which means I gotta bundle up. It's gonna be fun. All that footage that you just saw of me going to the store to pick up my gear, that was actually, I think, 2 years ago. And I did 24 hours, had a great time, caught some fish on a makeshift hook, and caught crayfish. And then I got home and I just really didn't like the footage. Man, this lighting is pretty bad, huh? Let's change that. Knives, check. If one breaks, which the last time I did this challenge, one of these broke in like the first 30 seconds of use. So I don't have a ton of confidence in these blades, but if one breaks, I've got a backup. The next thing I got is, this is a shower curtain. So I'm going to use that for my shelter. At least this will be part of the shelter. You can hear I'm kind of on the edge of civilization over here. You can hear like motorcycles going by and whatnot. I'll get deeper in the woods in a moment. I had paracord. They had this knockoff paracord that they were selling, but yeah, I used it over the last 2 years, so I went back and bought some of the other cheapo line that they have. It's 50 feet of line. That's pretty good. And I feel like this plastic line, I could probably unravel it, get it a little thinner, and use it for fishing line and other applications. Trash bags. There's 7, not 5, 7 in here, so that's pretty cool. I can use some of that for my shelter, for transporting bedding, etc. This is kind of an odd one. Water. I originally picked up, I think, a 6-pack of like little plastic bottles. I'm glad that I didn't have to use that because it's just more plastic than you need. So I got 1 gallon. They also had that at the dollar store. Why did I bring water? Because other than the creek where I am right now, once I get deeper in the woods or in the intertidal, there's no water. There's no water at all. So I'm not going to try to be purifying water locally. I'm just going to bring water with me because I can't have a fire anywhere near my shelter. It looks like it came undone, but matches. I wonder if I'll be able to get a fire going. There's a lot in there. This is kind of an odd one too. A bunch of different nails. But my thought is, I'm not going to allow myself to use anything that I find. So if I find fish hooks and lines and things like that, I'm not going to allow myself to use them. So I'm going to make my fish hooks out of nails. A container. Boom. So if I did need to boil water, I could do it in here. I plan on doing some cooking in here as well. Last thing is some type of food. So originally, this dollar store survival challenge was proposed by a YouTuber who goes by the handle Wrangler Star. And what he originally said was, you know, if you had to bug out and you were stuck in a parking lot that only had a dollar store, what would be 10 things that you could get if you only had 10 bucks in your pocket and, you know, the bank's collapsed or whatever and you can't get at your money. So he just went through and said, you know, you'd need shelter, you'd need fire, you'd need to be able to purify water, so you need a container. And he just kind of listed out a few things that he said that you'd need. And one of the things was some food. Well, I got thinking, yeah, I could bring a can of food, but honestly, that's just kind of boring. So instead, I found some cooking oil and a bag of flour at the dollar store. So I'm going to do a little bit more gourmet style cooking. And the one thing that I'm going to do that's a little different than other folks who have done this challenge before is I'm allowing myself some free packets, you know, flavor packets from, you know, fast food joints and whatnot. My thought is, yeah, you could probably just subsist off of this, the flour and the oil, and figure something out. I already tell you I'm going to find some wild food out here, so I'm not so worried about it, but I just thought with some flavor packets, a little creativity, some flour and some oil, we're going to take this survival challenge to the next level and do a little gourmet cooking in a kind of funny, fun way. So that's one of my cheats, I guess you could say. But honestly, they're free and you find them all over the place anyway. So that's it. That's my kit. So first things first, we're gonna do some foraging for some key ingredients. I need some greens and I need some alliums, some of these wild three-corner leeks. So I'm gonna just try to dig up some of this wild three-corner leek. I'll get a close-up shot here in a moment so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, and I'll talk about a few features, how I know this is for sure an edible species of allium. But it is non-native, and hopefully my heavy breathing is not too loud through this wireless mic. This is the first time I've ever used it. Thank you, Diane. Hopefully we'll have better audio from now on. So I'm just gonna loosen the soil around the bulbs. Because it's an allium, it does have a true bulb, and so it'll look like layers of an onion because it's a cousin to the onion. And I'm gonna get a decent amount of these. I'm just gonna get my hands dirty. There we go. All right. Boom. You can see the true bulbs at the bottom. Those are gonna be money. And we're gonna get rid of this little guy. And all those greens, kind of like garlic chives or leeks or green onions. So here you can see a small frog, and above its head is the distinct 5-petaled white flower of the three-cornered leek. You can see those distinct green ridges down the middle of each petal. Alright, so this very distinct leaf right here, right there, that is nasturtium. It is also edible, tastes kind of like radish. This is also non-native, so don't feel bad about picking it. So I'm going to give these guys a rinse just to get some of the mud off. I'm going to clean them again when we get down to the ocean because this fresh water is not particularly clean. It does run through some neighborhoods and things. And if you get runoff like this major storm we just had, herbicides, pesticides, there's all kinds of nasty stuff that ends up coming down these creeks. So this is why I'm not boiling my water out here. I'm just going to bring water. And, if it was a pinch, of course you could. I don't see the point. I don't really need to right now. I've purified water 1,000 times over the years. This is not the kind of water source that I would go for, but this is the last time we're going to see fresh water on this trip. So you can see, clean them off pretty good. I'll give them another rinse in the ocean. And that salt water is naturally an antibacterial, so because of the salt content. So it'll clean off anything that I just may have introduced to it by rinsing it in this sort of suburban stream. You can still hear the cars going by. Anyway, let's get back in the woods. All right, next thing I need to do is I need to find a poke pole. So I'm going to cut some willow. It's going to be green willow. And don't you worry, green willow is storm adapted. It's actually, through thousands and thousands of years of natural selection, it's actually very, very tolerant of being uprooted, cut, torn up by these storm events. As a matter of fact, if you cut the end of a willow, as long as it's got some little buds on it and you plant it, you just stick it down in the ground where it's wet, it'll grow a new willow tree. So I have no qualms cutting some green willow here because it is 100% sustainable. Let's go find some willow. I really hope you guys are enjoying this one. It's the funniest thing to me that a lot of us look forward to making videos about getting lost in the woods. It's like, what do you do for fun? Oh, we get lost in the woods. This is red oyster dogwood. It's super duper flexible. As you can see, you can just kind of tie it in a knot or use it for withies. The cool thing about it is you can chew the end of it, of one of these twigs, and it's really soft. It makes a brush. You can clean your teeth with it. So you can see it's got reddish bark. And then that very distinct leaf with those deep ridges or ribs. Yeah, you'll find this one growing along the streams just like where we are right now. But anyway, I'm here for the willow. This one right here, I think. We're going to make a poke pole. So now I got to pull out my steak knife and see if I can actually cut some wood with it. What I'm going to do with this is called groove and snap. I'm just going to score around the sapling, and then once I've kind of weakened the cambium and that first interior layer of wood, I'm just going to bend it back and forth until it breaks. Man, this is actually surprisingly cutting pretty well. Of course, that's what I was thinking the last time I used this exact same knife, and within about 30 seconds, it broke. There it is. Boom. Sorry if that sunlight was blinding you there, but there's the cut. Groove up here. The teeth of the sort of steak knife style is actually kind of working out for me. It's kind of working like a saw, which is pretty cool. Anyway, you get the idea. Got our willow. I trimmed up most of these nodes. I'll clean them up a little bit more before I actually use it as a poke pole. All right. Whew. Struggle was real. Man, that's a heavy bag. Okay, so, wow. Okay, whew. I am totally sweating. I just climbed way up this mountain to find a nice little spot here. Sweating is not good when you can't have a fire, and if you see this area behind me, it is a tinderbox, so I am definitely not having a fire. Now luckily it's early enough in the day. First thing I want to do is build my shelter because that's the most costly activity that I'll be engaged in today. I want to do that while it's still, light and it's still early. That way I know I'm going to break a sweat, but hopefully I'll have enough time in the sunlight and with my body heat to dry out my clothes, because you try to do a night alone in the woods with no blanket and no fire and you're soaking wet with sweat, that's a recipe for hypothermia. So I don't want to do that. I want to give myself time to dry out. This is where I'm going to build my shelter. I've also seen some of my favorite edible plants, specifically one of my favorite tea plants. Let's do this. Let's build a shelter. Like I said, this bag, all it's got in here is just your usual stuff. It's got the audio visual stuff. My wireless mics, thanks again Diane. Komika, they're working pretty good, I think. I'm pretty happy with that. GoPro, cables, and then these are, I want to talk about these a little bit later, Wagon Tech Ion Boost chargers. This is what's going to allow me to do 24 hours and still get all the footage that I want. Not to mention you can jump start your car with this thing, and it's like super cheap. Super stoked on these. Everything else is out of my dollar store bag. Whew. Already tapping into it. Like I said, there's no water up here, so I thought rather than a pair of pliers, I'd get this instead. All right, let's build a shelter. And the poison oak at the bottom. So that's my ridge line. It's going to be very low profile because I want to keep as much heat in as possible. It's kind of cool. It's got these little magnets that are stuck in here. I guess it must stick to your shower or something like that. But these are going to work actually excellent. I can just tie right around that to keep it in place. And then I've just whittled a little peg. I'm just going to jam that down in here to keep the corners down. Here you can see that I've actually rolled the seam between the trash bag and the shower curtain and then pegged it in place using wooden pine pegs. This is allowing me to have a watertight seal. Definitely not the world's most beautiful shelter back there, but I think it's going to work. But the tide waits for no one, and I know the tide is going out now. So let's go see if we can make a fish hook from a nail, make some fishing line from this cheap dollar store rope, make a poke pole, see if we can catch something. If we can't catch an eel, then at least let's try and forage some mussels, maybe some seaweed, something like that. Limpets, whatever. Cook us up a feast. I'm getting hungry. Here you can see that I found a patch of wild radish with that very distinct lobed leaf. These are quite delicious. So you can see as I enter the intertidal that I'm actually carrying some pine wood with me for a fire. You can see the tide was already going out, and so I had little time. First things first, it's important to go re-rinse those wild three-corner leeks. All right, so I got some seawater in here. Probably don't need that much. If I do need more, I'll just get more. It's got a nice saline solution, right? A nice saltiness to it, so I think this should actually work out quite well. That's probably good. I'm just gonna get in there and make some dough. There's an old cowboy saying that cowboys always prefer a camp cook who washes his hands anywhere other than in the biscuit dough. So wash your hands before you try this. And here you can see I finally got a nice ball of dough. Time to flatten it out and then cut it into noodles. There we go. Now, I can guarantee you these are not going to be the prettiest noodles, but I also really don't care because I'm super hungry already. As you can tell, I'm very skilled with my noodle making. I'm doing this for years. I only used about half the dough. I made some noodles. You're probably laughing at me. This is my first time ever trying to make noodles without a pasta press. It's not easy. They don't look amazing, like professional, but I can guarantee you they're going to taste delicious. So what I'm thinking is, I'm going to forage some mussels real quick, maybe some seaweed, just so I know for sure I've got something before the tide comes in. And then, once I've got some food accumulated right here, then I'm going to make my fish hook out of my nail, assemble my poke pole, try using some of those mussels for bait, and try some poke poling. So I got my little baking dish or whatever this is. It's already worked for a cutting board. I'm going to boil some stuff in it soon, but in the meantime, I'm going to use it to get some mussels. There's also some limpets up here. This is Ladia gigantea, the owl limpet. Let's grab some food first. That right there is the Ladia gigantea, the owl limpet. You can only take these by hand. You got to be quick too. It's not easy. I missed that one. Too slick. You can see there's one right here. It's almost impossible to get this guy though, because you got to get a running start. I could try, but yeah, not a chance. Anyway, there's plenty of mussels to go around. Those are some kind of eggs down there. That yellow stuff, that's crazy. Look at this. I wonder what that's from. Could be edible, but it also might not be. If it's cabezon, their eggs are poisonous. Yeah, I just try to pick the bigger ones, and then I'll pick a few from each rock. I don't want to take too much, you know? Not that mussels are really in any danger of being over-harvested, in my opinion, but it's just always a better practice when you're foraging anything to just like take a little here, take a little there, and that way, you know, it stays sustainable. Yeah, so most of the other YouTubers who have done this challenge, they usually just buy a meal at the dollar store and then cook it up, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just I thought this is Catch and Cook California. It'd be a lot more fun if I bring some condiment packets and some flour and then make something, you know, from scratch based on what we can forage, because that's what we're all about. So hopefully you guys are enjoying this. Got another limpet. Bam! I really love those limpets, and the cool thing about them too is they're open pretty much year round unless there's a really crazy freak plankton bloom. Most of the time they're not affected by any kind of red tide like domoic acid or paralytic shellfish poisoning kind of bioaccumulation of toxins, unlike the mussels. So because they're grazers, they're actually a mollusk that eats marine microalgae, kind of like this green film you see on the rocks. To them, they're the cow in a pasture. But what we see is just like a green film on the rocks. That's all grass to them to eat. But because they eat, you know, marine microalgae instead of plankton, they're not subject to the same closures due to these elevated levels of biotoxins from plankton. So it's kind of cool. You can get them year round, and they taste like clams. They're really good. Kind of have a calamari texture to them. That's pretty good. All right, I think that just about does it. I'm gonna go back, make a fish hook out of a nail, see if I can rig up a poke pole, and then come down here and see if I can catch something. The tide already looks like it's coming in though, so we'll see. At least we got mussels and limpets. All right, got a nail, dollar store nail, dollar store cordage. I'm gonna undo this so that I can isolate, you know, some smaller strands to use. This right here is indurated sandstone. This is our local sandstone called gray wacky, and it's got a lot of quartz in it, and sometimes feldspar and other really, really hard minerals in terms of Mohs hardness scale. Well, it's harder than steel, so you can actually use it like sandpaper Sometimes people will leave comments on my videos and other videos I watch where they're like, why would anybody want to learn how to use stone tools? They're so inefficient. Yeah, we'll tell that to our ancestors who relied on them for millions of years from before the time that we were human. And, you know, at least 50,000 years as modern humans. We use stone tools a lot. I still use them. I use them almost every day. And this is making progress like super fast. I'm already seeing that I'm sharpening this thing down. It's a sharpening stone. It's the same thing. You know, we use that for our knives every day. Yet people are like, why would you use stone tools? They're so primitive. Also, I should probably note at this point, the reason I always say keep the old ways alive, the reason I refer to, you know, bone tools and stone tools and whatnot as traditional technologies rather than primitive technologies. Nah, I'm not going to go into this in this video. But I'll talk about it soon. It's important. It's getting sharp. It's also getting hot. The friction creates a lot of heat. And I use the same method with modern fish hooks. When I'm out here, if you find that you're pulling and it catches onto a rock and kind of bends the tip, I just do this for like 2 minutes, good to go. All right, that's pretty darn sharp. It's nice and sharp. Now I'm going to file down the back a little bit, just because I don't like that, how round it is. I'm going to make it into like a T, so I'm just going to grind off 2 sides of that round head. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to nail it into my poke pole. I want to do it at the base of the poke pole. Just using any old hammerstone. Now I'm going to bend it. This is how I'm making my fish hook shape. And then I'm just going to wiggle it on out of there. I got it a little bit of the way out. Now I'm going to hit it again. Bend it over a little more. And I want to do this at the base of the poke pole rather than the actual tip of the poke pole, because it is going to compromise the wood just a little bit. So to start, it does not look like a fish hook. It looks like this. But now we can start to kind of bring that tip in. And again, you're going to have to resharpen the tip when you do this. It's just how it is. But it's starting to look like a fish hook. It doesn't look great, but you know what? I'm using a nail from the dollar store, so give me a break. The beauty of the beach too is, if you're in an area like this, there's so many files and rasps to be found, as long as you're cool with using stone tools. And they work really, really well. You know, I could have allowed myself to just pick up whatever I find down here. I find fish hooks down here all the time, but I just don't think it's as fun, you know? Like, this is a challenge. What would you actually do? I mean, obviously the scenario is kind of ridiculous. You just happen to have like an apocalyptic situation happen while you're stuck in a parking lot next to the dollar store, and you don't have access to your bank account, and you can't go home to get your bug out bag. I mean, like those are pretty specific circumstances, but whatever, you know, we're going to play along, and we're going to do this dollar store survival challenge. And you know what? I don't want to make light of this situation at all, but there's a lot of folks in our communities who are homeless who actually do the dollar store survival challenge every single day. So it can be done. And I don't know, sometimes I hear people say some pretty negative things about homeless folks, but obviously it's a very complicated situation. There's a lot of reasons why folks might end up homeless. And I tend to just kind of try to learn from them every time I meet somebody, you know, who is homeless. Try and help them out a little bit, and then, you know, see if there's something I can learn from them. I've seen a lot of really cool bushcraft that was stuff that was homeless folks that were doing. Learned a lot from them. Ooh-wee, that's sharp. All right, now we're talking. Boom, nice and sharp. All right, I'm gonna tie this up. I'm not gonna spend much time showing you the knot because the tide is coming in. I do really want to spend some time actually fishing. If you want to see the knot, My buddy Matt's Fisherman's Life and I are going to do a collaboration soon that will show how to do this with shellfish hooks made with all stone tools the old way. These are traditional Southern California indigenous fish hooks. And the way I'm going to tie this is the way that I'm going to tie those fish hooks. So stay tuned for that video and you can see how I'm tying this. Alright, so this leash is a little bit long. It's going to be alright. I can already feel, yeah, that's catching. So we'll see. You know, we'll see. No guarantees. But now we need bait. The thing about mussels is they don't stay very easily on the hook. And this is a pretty thick hook. That's not too bad though for a mantle. The other thing is, I know monkey face prickleback absolutely love squid. Never tried to fish for them with the mussel. That's what it looks like. We'll see if anybody's home. There's some good cracks in here. I'm going to try these real quick. I like that it's going so far back in here. No guarantees. Nothing so far. Ooh, I just poked something soft. That might have been a fish. Oh, something's in there. Something just moved for sure. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, something's for sure in there. It's so funny. Like the very first hole that I'm going to poke, and there you go. All right, folks. We're gonna get a little fire going. Super safe spot to do it. Everything's super wet here. Yeah, there's no vegetation around. I used some of it for bait, but I also ate a lot of it raw. But on the inside of the owl limpet shell is the silhouette of an owl. That's what that white is, like an owl sitting on a branch. Hence the owl limpet. And these have been OG California cuisine for like 10,000 years. Some of my colleagues have written papers on finding these in shell midden deposits, radiocarbon dated to about 10,000 years ago. Chances are they were probably OG cuisine about 15,000 years ago, but most of those sites are underwater. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to scrub these guys, make sure I get any limpets or anything off of them. They have these tiny limpets that'll adhere to them. I just want to get rid of any of those before I throw them in the pot. You can actually see the little limpets that are adhered to them. One steams and opens up, and then the one below it, it's dropping limpets. The one below it steams and opens up, and these little limpets fall inside. Then you go to take a bite and you get one of those. You could chip a tooth. And then we're returning them to the intertidal. Those are clean. So here I am just starting to make the broth. I'm using some of the water that I brought, and then I'm going to mix in some of those condiment packets on a recommendation from Diane. She told me that basically a wonton soup base is soy sauce, sesame oil, and green onion. So I'm using the wild three-corner leek in place of the green onion. I've got this tiny sesame packet that I found in an instant ramen pack, and then I've got a soy sauce packet that I got with some sushi. So the three of them together should make a nice broth. I'm not going to actually make wontons, but I've got those homemade noodles to add to my shellfish, and my thought is it's going to taste pretty darn good. So I set it directly on the coals to simmer and added the noodles on top. Alrighty folks, here it is. So I'm going to try the noodles first because I've never tried to make homemade noodles before. Oh man. Dude, the broth is super good too. Oh, Diane was right. Of course she was. Oh man, that's so good. So the, oh dude, yeah. The owl limpet, what happens is when it cooks, the shell gets so hot that it actually releases the whole entity, the whole animal right out of the shell. Some people don't eat the guts. I believe in Hawaii they make a dish called opi'i, and they also do a Japanese Hawaiian fusion called opi'i poki. And I'm pretty sure they eat the gut. And I'm pretty sure the ancestors of this land ate the gut because it's just full of a bunch of seaweed, which is good for you. So I'm going to give it a dip. I'm going to give it a taste. The gut tastes like a mussel, which is great. The foot is pretty chewy, dude, but the flavor is amazing. I'm going to experiment with these in the future. I'm going to do a specific limpet recipe. I don't know. Maybe I'll pound it, try and get it a little more tender. Dude, the noodles are good. We got, this is the wild radish green. So good. So good. It's got a nice little spice, but it's like more mellow when you cook it. It's like spicy spinach, but it doesn't leave that film on your teeth like spinach does, you know? Let's see. Got the nasturtium green. Same sort of thing. Super good. Those three-corner leeks. So good. So good. Mussels. Dude, I've been waiting all day to eat. Oh. Good morning. Good morning. I'll tell you, it looks like my size 15 feet at some point turned and caught the ridge line, and it looks like I broke my main support on the other side. So my $1.50 shelter was not exactly the greatest. That being said, it was super foggy last night, and I am bone dry right now. And this pine duff is so incredibly comfortable. I've never slept that well on any survival challenge I've ever done. The last time I did one, I mean, granted, it was only 50 degrees last night. The last time we did it, it was like 30 degrees. Everything was frozen in the morning, including our water. But the last time I did a challenge like this, we had a fire, and I only slept about an hour. This time, I slept probably like a solid 7 hours, so. Success. Oh yeah, I stuffed those garbage bags full of pine duff, and they worked as a blanket. I only kind of kept them on my legs because my brother made me this awesome jacket, and it was keeping me totally warm, but my legs were a little cold, so I put those over my legs, and it was totally obvious. Like if I turned and they fell off, I'd get a little cold, I'd put them back on, and they'd totally warm me up. So that worked. We're going to take this thing down, pack it all up, leave no trace, right? Pack out what you pack in. And then we're going to go make some breakfast. The shelter has been deconstructed. So now I want to introduce you to one of my favorite plants. I saw it yesterday, so I'm going to have to relocate it. But this is such a great plant for tea. Yeah, there's an example. This is a real small one. It's in the mint family. It's a little creeper. You'll know, not that it's like creepy, it just creeps. And you'll know it's in the mint family because it has a square stem. But it's very, very distinct, and it's delicious. It's got like an earthy, minty flavor. It's super good. So I'm going to gather up a bunch of this. If you crush it, oh, the aroma is absolutely incredible. Yeah. So the flavor is even better than the aroma. Oh yeah, so before we go and make some tea down on the beach, I did just want to give a shout out to Wagon Tech for their Ion Boost V8 torque here. This is what I used to charge my batteries, to charge my GoPro, my phone the whole time. It's got 2 ports, a flashlight, and I legitimately have jump-started my old car with this before. So they're pretty rad, they're pretty cheap, and I highly recommend them. So I got back down to the beach, started another fire, and got it burning down into a bed of coals. Set my vessel on a 3-stone hearth, and I'm now using my fingers to direct my breath to increase the flow of oxygen, and that's how you can see that the fire is really growing there. Remember, the pyramid of fire is fuel, oxygen, and heat. So I got this nice tea going, and of course my wireless mic cut out at that moment, but here's me giving it a taste test, and here's my impression of my reaction. Oh my God, guys, it's so good. I love making fun of myself. No, it was super tasty. Nice, minty, earthy flavor. I think at some point I'm sipping on it and I'm saying something like, man, if you grew this stuff and you had it in your botanical garden, you could probably market this as a local, 100% old school San Francisco treat. But, yeah, it's incredible. So tasty. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. It was a ton of fun to make. And yeah, come on out with me. I'm guiding full-time now. I'm in the Bay Area, and I would love to take you out, teach you some poke pulling, survival skills, foraging, whether that's for shellfish or if you want to go inland a little bit into the forests, I can teach you mushroom identification, wild edible green identification, and any of these other survival skills, friction fire, stone tools, etc. So hit me up. In the meantime, keep the old ways alive. Let's see it.
Oh my god.
Bam! Holy cow.
Not staining blue or brown when bruised. Oh, yeah. Stock surface is finely netted.
What do you think? How was the clamming?
Oh, so awesome. So much fun.
Yes.
You got to do this.
Totally fun. This is my first time and I loved it.
We got Washingtons, we got horse necks, nice big ones, and we got steamers. Oh, how'd you like crab snaring?
Freaking awesome. Kevin is the master of the crabs.
Come crab snaring. Oh, yeah. If I can keep from breaking my digging stick here. No, I'm just going to keep breaking it apparently. You would not believe how fast this process is. It's, oh, just dulled the tip. It's fast as long as you don't mess it up like Kev.